Ooh, yes. Well, my good people, near and far, wheresoever, whomsoever, how many soever, how few soever, with whatever intentions and predispositions. Welcome one and all to what is, in 5 or 6 seconds, going to be a running podcast, aka a runcast, also known as my podcast, where I run. Who am I? I am Run Man. What is the podcast's name? Right along with Run Man, and you are on it. But before we go any further, let's actually, start running. All right, here we go. Wow, what a mild Friday it is. Boy, it is just chill out here today. There is no uproar of heat. There is no blustery wind cracking down trees and blowing people off the street and onto the street and lifting up parts of my car this way and that. That person's not looking, so I run this way. Safety first, my friends. Gotta keep the head on a swivel. Gotta engage the periph. I must indulge myself in use and development of the periph. It's all a part of the game we play. It's all a part of the road we lay. Shall we continue? Whew. All right. Now, here on this bright, pleasant Friday afternoon, I find myself compelled by a docket with one item on it, and one item only. And we're going to get to that. But before we do, I may as well repeat myself. The point of this podcast is to become good at running. I was once bad at running. I am now decent at running. Or at least I'm cusping decent. Depends on what you consider. Getting out here and doing it means that I'm exactly as good as I want to be, and we can only go up from here. So it really is a perfect little stew of nutritious, perhaps overly salty, greasy ingredients. And that's the Runcast. Now, I have an end game in mind. I have not said anything about it on the podcast. I've kind of hinted here and there. It will involve running for long periods of time. I have a battle plan. The battle plan is to incrementally add time to every run, because I prefer to think of running in terms of time and not distance. Ooh, I prefer to think of it that way. It's a little simpler for me. Which way do I want to go? I want to go this way. Yeah. Maybe I don't want to go the conventional route that I set out with in my head. Maybe I want to go just a little bit of a different way. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway. Yes. So good to be out here. So, anyway, specifically, we have behind us about 35 episodes. This is episode 36, I want to say, of the pod. And the majority of those runs have been between 40 minutes and an hour and 20, hour and 30. So I'm averaging about an hour a run. More or less here and there. Depends on the mood. Depends on the motivation. I was recently thinking about just shelving any development and keeping it to an hour for a while, with the next increment either being 15 minutes more or half an hour more per run on average. We'll see. If I play my cards right and upload every day and store all my videos on the tube, I can, without getting any overhead mounted, I can record runs of up to 3.5 hours. That's beyond my current capacity to do a run of that length every day. I don't know how long that's going to be unfeasible. But I want to do some proof of concept stuff and see if I can't just keep an hour and just keep rattling these hours out. And then maybe experiment with going one step above, like half an hour. Like, what can we do with like an hour and a half average runs? Can we do that? I think so. I think we could do it without really making too many adjustments. All we got to do is up the tenacity a hair and pedal to the metal. I think that's all that we need. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of the circus program today. That's what's on the ticket. We're gonna do something like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. This is not going to be a limit pushing episode. This is not going to be a bandwidth taxing episode. I'm managing my resources. And I find that I'm getting the yes. And I guess that's what's on the docket, huh? Alright. Well, let's get to it then, shall we? Today, I'm motivated to speak on a subject and give some praise, give a shout out, to share something of value, right? I've done this before, and I'll do it again. Anybody who's seen the podcast knows I can scarcely go 20 minutes without referencing something that's brought me value in life. Usually it's music. Sometimes it's things people say. Sometimes it's moments that I look back on with a new glossy coating of introspection, which might reflect a bit more wisdom onto the present. Perhaps provide me with a tool that I can use, or a thought that I can upgrade my game with. Sometimes these things happen. We micro dive into music, check out lyrics, talk about things that I'm totally not qualified to talk about because I'm not really a musician. At least I've never tried my hand at it, really. And frankly, 99% of the things I say I'm unqualified to say. And it's with that sort of audacity that we plunge headfirst into a concept that was brought to me by a fellow out of the UK, currently in Cabo, whose name is Dan Mangena. Dreamer, CEO, the man, the myth, one of us, one of the people, one of our community. Happy to speak about this concept that he communicated to me. He and his team put this idea together in a presentable manner, and when it came time to do some workshops and to get introduced to the community of Dream with Dan and all that, I had some time. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was over the course of a week and a half, when I first indulged the notion of the flow funnel. What is the flow funnel? Well, I don't have a whiteboard, and I don't have access to a word processor to type documents and fax them to you. So what I'm going to do is wildly mischaracterize a parodical representation of what might be something close to what Dan talks about when he refers to this structure called the flow funnel. And if you really want to get just the at a glance corn nuts about it, I'll tell you this much. It's a tool. We like tools on this podcast. We're talking about them all the time. We're reviewing them, sharpening them, and applying them always on the podcast. Tools like check-ins. Tools like these tools like these songs we're talking about. Well, the flow funnel is a tool, and I can do you one better. I can paint you a slightly better picture than even that, with my uneducated but practicing knowledge base. I can tell you that it's, well, I guess let's talk about a theme that's going to run through this episode, as it does with most episodes, whether or not the undercurrent is brought to the surface and spoken about or not. There's always this thing that I hold in these podcasts of what is useful. That's the question. What is useful? It's good. Because without being an obsessive type, I definitely have a clinginess about me. I definitely will overuse tools until they have grown dull, lost the varnish and the polish. The grip's a little scratchy. The tools have overstayed their welcome and must be updated, upgraded, cleaned, taken out, and examined for what they really are, or whatever. And so that's pretty much anything. Any point anybody tries to make, anytime anybody tries to sell me anything, I watch myself for immediate outright rejection of people's points, platforms, concepts, manners of communication. And I also watch myself for finding things that work just well enough for the moment, but whose terms always come. And if my eyes are open, there's always a better way of using the tool, or a better tool that can be used in the place of what I'm currently using. Whether that's a strategy of how to treat people, or how to view myself, or how to go about considering making changes of any scale. How to review my trajectory through this life on the blue marble. All these things. So I'm going to paint you a picture of this tool. We're going to look at it. And the term that I would use that's less general than tool is going to be, and I think I'm going to use the word right, but I'm not sure. Help me if I've got this wrong. There's a concept that I've learned of people from different modalities across the world using graphical illustration to paint a picture of a useful way of looking at the world. So you might see beautiful, colorful blankets with patterns on them, whose iconography and even construction have something to say, or were built with the intention of conveying something, pointing at something fundamental when it comes to representing the universe, the way it works, what it kind of looks like at large, what the essence of it is, what the experience of it is. Mandalas. Currently, the one that people seem to be adopting is the letter S. People love the letter S when it comes to the universe. Oh yeah, the universe spins. Kind of looks like an S. Well, I find that to be a little reductive, but if it helps, then it helps. The flow funnel is a mandala. The flow funnel is a useful way of looking at the world. So what is this picture? Well, again, I don't have a whiteboard. Dan's good at the whiteboard. He's a gunslinger when it comes to the whiteboard. But instead of that, I've got a podcast. So we're gonna pod the flow funnel. Poorly, but hopefully with grit and resolve. We have a motto on this podcast. The motto is low expectations, high morale. That's us out here on the old dusty trail. So the flow funnel kind of looks like this. Things begin. I'm not going to choose my words particularly carefully. I know that that's something that I do a little bit too much in general. I'm just going to see if you can flow with me a bit. Things begin in a very loose, quick, free, non-dense condition, or series of conditions. That's kind of where you find the beginning of things happening. Before thoughts are thoughts, before energy, love that word, before energy, you have this flickering, flitting, flying, what's the word for it? Noumenal, difficult to describe, special certain something. Just rocketing around freely. That's the realm of the great before. the great potential becoming, I don't know what you might call it. What's useful, right? We'll just call it the realm of, we'll just call it beginnings. How about that? Things begin this way. In the next realm, things consolidate and condense a little bit. You might be able to catch a glimpse of things at this level. This is like the level of, well, now we get to the energy, don't we? We get to, oh yeah, you can kind of feel this. It's hard to wrap your words around it, but you can kind of feel things that fall into your life from this realm. Things that take root and take hold in the world beyond that beginning drawing board panel. It's a little bit more dense. Not much, but a little. Let's say those things stick around for whatever reason. Conditions are ripe, the way the universe is set up just now, for some of these feeling type energetic signals, these transmissions, to settle a little bit, like any good I was gonna make references that were gonna take us away from the subject matter. It's not easy. We have the beginnings, we have the energy. Let's say the energy sticks around for a while or finds a suitable, nourishing environment. Maybe in a person's mind, maybe just in the background at play, quietly feeding things and helping them to grow. Again, I'm not gonna worry about drawing a concise, high-resolution picture. But let's say things get to that point. Well, now we're going from energy to thought forms, stories, beliefs. I like that. Because for every time that I feel an emotion, I'll echo zillions of them, semi-consciously, subconsciously, sometimes occasionally consciously. Right? Thoughts, beliefs, and patterns. Okay, suppose that I've nourished and fed and continued, perhaps ad nauseum, perhaps unnecessarily much, to continue to propagate these belief systems, good, bad, or ugly. Suppose one takes a root in me, finds a home, burrows deep, and begins doing what everything does, left to its own devices, and to grow. It's a growing world, right? It's an awakening, becoming world, right? Let's not get too far off topic. I'm sure there's much to be said about the annihilating aspect of the world as well, but for our intents and purposes today, I'm just, without a whiteboard or the inclination to use a whiteboard, I'm talking an impossible picture into being here. From the top, we have the beginnings and the potential place. Then we've got the energy plates. Then we've got the thought forms, stories, patterns of energy, just redoing themselves and echoing and penduluming. Much more solid. You see a lot of people doing that. You see things happening. You see creative people seized by emotions occasionally, but they often go. But it's not until the person is in a position where their quirks and luck and a lot of alignment have occurred that these always rushing and receding tides of feeling and energy might find a suitable host in that person, and boom, you've got a story. Big ones, small ones. Some people's entire lives seem to be about a theme or a story playing out in a human being. Some people, it works. Some people, that story is not one that they're prepared to live out, but they don't know how to live any other story. The flow funnel kind of addresses this by painting a picture so that we can get some solid ground underneath us and maybe pivot and adjust. Look at what's going on and then interact with it. So that's all that this picture building is. And again, I'm leaving about 90 to 95% of what's actually happening here out. A, because I don't understand it that well. B, I don't have the articulation nor the inclination to really get into the weeds and see. This is not a workshop. This is a shout out. It's an extended shout out to Dan and the Flow Funnel, because I'm very grateful for this to be in my life. It has helped me. But before I close out on the picture, we've got at least one, I think 2 more places to go on our mandala. Beginnings, energy, story, then what? Physicality. You live something for long enough, and right there, oh shoot, got some bees in my eyes. We're okay. We're okay. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. If you can slow that charge down even further, all the way down, and it does this naturally too, all the way from potential to zipping energy, to patterns of zipping stories, to patterns of zipping energy that become stories, themes, narratives. And then you let that percolate for a long enough period of time, and then things start showing up physically. So says the mandala. If I live a story whereby I'm a hypochondriac and I know illness is going to take me the F out, I just know it. Every day of my life I think about it all the time. Maybe it wouldn't have happened if I didn't feed it so much. But now, it's been 55 years, and instead of aligning my circumstances, modifying my behavior, and just allowing myself to feel into, that's a tough one, isn't it? To feel into any other possibility than that I'm going to die of illness. Well, you talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. Well, we just got back from the hospital. Guess what showed up on the MRI? Yeah, L cancer. Or whatever it is. We've all done this. We've all expected, hey there, we've all expected and anticipated these things. A series of these things. And you can almost, if you weren't locked into that story, and you're just a passing pedestrian on the street, watching this person every day grumble and groan about the cancer that they're growing, and then you just watch the way that their bodies just just seem to grow it, you know? That's what I'm talking about. But it doesn't just work against us. It works for us too. So, there's a lot of places you can play in the flow funnel. Let's go back one more time. Beginnings, then energy, then pattern and story, then physical things showing up, then here we are living this thing. Day to day, moment to moment. So, it's a mandala. It's a way of looking at things. You know, I didn't think too hard about which direction I was going to go. We usually walk on this part of the road. This is my walk spot. I've sat on that hill 1,000 times. At all times of day, in all moods, thinking about stuff like this. Or nothing at all. Depending. That's not us right now. Right now, I'm just giving a taste, just a flavor, just blowing a little kiss to the flow funnel because it's awesome. However, this episode is not about the flow funnel. This episode is a shout out. A shout out is not a description of a thing. A shout out is, hey, here's this thing that's really cool. Check it out. So I've already shouted some names and some things. I've given frivolous flying fingers places to flock. I've given Google the chance to be useful to somebody. I mean, we have an internet. We have this weird collective mind that exists in cable, wire, and signals, and satellites, and undersea cables, fiber optic, and plasma screens. It's powerful. We have this thing. We can use it to look these things up. These words and these people. I highly recommend you do. And it's good for you. I'm looking for what's good for me. Okay. Here's a story. No, let's start in the beginning. How about that? I'm born, and a bunch of stuff happens. Seems like enough things happen in a way that seems local enough. That is, then catalyzed by an education system that further associates the consciousness with a local series of inputs. I'm talking about being a person in a very nebulous sense in the very beginning, and then through sociality, and then more directly through culture and society beyond the family unit and early caregivers. These stories develop, and one story is the story of Justin. A lot of special certain something was around. Thank you. All right. All right. A good pace going. And, well, after some period of time, I identify as me so hard and to such a seemingly deep level. It's kind of tough I find myself mired in self. Or, well, that's one way of looking at things, right? But if I have a picture, if I have a mandala that shows something bigger or more full of potential than a conventional, materialistic, behavioristic, meat factory, cradle to grave mandala. Well, I like alternative mandalas because they make more, because they just work better. Like, even at the end of the day, no story's better than any other story. They're just stories. But I spent so long in stories that weren't helping. And I found myself revving up and sometimes even consciously ramping up these signals, these emotional signals, over time, in patterns, in these stories, that became these self-fulfilling prophecies. Like, oh my God, the world sucks. Well, yeah, the way that I was looking at it, yeah. Very self-fulfilling prophecy. Things kept showing up. People and opportunities kept showing up to reinforce what the universe thought that I wanted. Because it's a big damn universe. How do you get that big? Well, because there's a lot of gas. There's a lot of fuel in the tank. The universe is quite happy to give you a jump and get you on the road. But if you're looking at the map that says conventional reality, 9 to 5, slowly grow the flat tire or the spare tire and the tumor story, that one gets pushed at us pretty hard. A lot of these do. Everyone's trying to sell you something. Oh my God. The attitude of the flow funnel is great because it came from this place. It was communicated to me as just a thing that I might use. And I liked that. It speaks to something. If you invite me somewhere, I'm pretty likely to show up, all things considered. But if you demand I show up somewhere, or if you need me to show up somewhere, and you're not my child, Like me, I need to show up for me. Beyond that, I don't have any kids. If I do, then yes. If they skin, if they get hurt, or if they're in danger, then yes, I'm willing to, not only willing to, but I'm sure I'm going to be compelled to respond to the need and show up for that person. And occasionally other folks as well. But there is this thing where there's so much beckoning demand, and so many, you've experienced this, there's so many wailing voices begging for that jump, using words, often unconscious rhythms and patterns of words. Need help. The Republicans are moving to do this. Oh, those fucking Democrats are gonna go do that. We gotta stop them. Oh, these lazy people gotta get back in the office. Oh, all these stories. I participated less and less given time in these stories that were around me all the time. Became highly sensitized to them and their lack of utility and mobility. And when I stopped talking, I was kind of hoping that would be the end of it. I could kind of break free of that cloying inertia imposed by these cultures, these structures and these cultures that we grew up with. Well, maybe not. Maybe once I stop talking, well, hey, I thought things might go one way, but when I stopped contributing to the conventional conversation, people started looking at me a little different, and they started reaching further across healthy boundaries and through them into unhealthy boundary territory, or unhealthy territory. Anyway, people started demanding that I follow the conversation and that I back their points and back their plays. And even being silent wasn't enough. I was getting yelled at and chided and called very deeply selfish by human beings after I didn't acquiesce to their entrenched, beckoning, grabbing, clawing stories. I wasn't joining in. When you don't join in, you're an outsider. And when you're an outsider, you get exiled. And when you're exiled, that's a